pretend that there's a big crowd. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today, and I want to thank the Aliso Viejo Library for inviting me. Thank you, Wendell, too, for putting this together. So, I'd like this to be an informal, interactive discussion. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask me during the presentation. By the way, are you a writer? Do you write? No? Okay, because I also like to talk to groups about writing, how I published the book, and all those kind of things. So, when I first started writing my book, Freeways to Flip-Flops, A Family's Year of Gutsy Living on a Tropical Island, I was focused mainly on me, my family, and our move to Belize. And then I realized that this is about so much more than just my family and moving. This is about taking risks in life. This is about not postponing your dreams. Everybody has dreams in life, and a lot of times we postpone our dreams for various reasons. We have excuses. For example, when we're young, we say we don't have money. And then we have a family with children. And then we say we can't do it because we have kids. And then after that, we have college to pay for. And then we have aging parents that we have to take care of, maybe. So at different points in life, there will always be excuses. I know in my case, my mother passed away at 57, which is young, before my parents could go away and enjoy life after retirement. And my husband's father passed away 1 year after retiring. So I always believe, do not make excuses for your dreams. Start planning your goals today. Many of us reach a point where we're overwhelmed, overstressed, we have too many bills, we have to drive through Los Angeles gridlock freeways. We have kids maybe at home and teenagers, and we have entitlement problems with the kids always whining for more stuff. I mean, this is typical here in Orange County. And in my case, in 2003, my 3 sons were 16, 13, and 10, and it was everything at the same time. Our oldest son at 16 was in high school and was getting in trouble with girlfriends, all kinds of problems, and it was affecting my entire family because I was so focused on him that I didn't have time to spend with the other 2 kids, and my husband was too busy with work and spending time driving through LA that he didn't have time for the family. So we had to make a decision. We had 2 choices, in my opinion. We could either ship our kid away, our oldest son, to one of those schools, behavior modification schools, but I don't know if you're aware, they're extremely expensive, and we didn't want to spend all our savings on this school. Plus I have friends who have told me they've done this and it didn't work. So the second choice was to sell everything and move, and that's what we decided to do. I have always dreamed of moving to a tropical island. When I was young, I lived in Europe. I was born in Denmark and I lived in Africa as a little girl. And then I moved to Paris, and I wanted my kids to see how other kids live in other countries where they don't have as much stuff. And I thought this would be a wonderful learning experience for them. And my husband wanted to have a simple life, plus he wanted adventure. I mean, you know, we were in our mid to late 40s, and we were just fed up with life in general, and we just decided, let's just try it. So, the problem was that we wanted to move to a tropical island, but everything was so expensive. And what we decided to do was just research and see what we could find. Well, first of all, let me backtrack a little bit. I just wanted to show you at Christmas time, you know, grandparents who bring presents and birthdays and things. I was fed up with my children taking everything for granted, ripping the paper and not even appreciating things. And that really, I thought, this is disgusting. This has to change. And in our neighborhood, not us, but some parents I'm showing this as an example, would buy a brand new car for their 16-year-old, which I thought was crazy. And the thing is that I have an example of a neighbor who told me that a 16-year-old girl was given a brand new BMW, and she went out and she looked inside the car and she told her father, "Dad, this isn't a new car. It's got 300 miles on it." I mean, this kind of stuff was just getting to me. So, thanks to my toilet that was leaking one day, a Scottish plumber came to my house. And I was raised in Europe, as I mentioned, and I have lived in Scotland. So I started talking to him about retirement. And I said, "So where do you want to retire?" And he said, "Oh, I can't wait to go to Belize." And I'd never heard of Belize in 2003. I said, "Where is it?" And he said, "Well, it used to be British Honduras, and it's the next country south of Mexico." So I will point it to you in case you haven't seen it. It's the yellow country there. There's Mexico, and it's the next country here. So I was so excited because he told me you could find oceanfront for $15,000. And I said, "No, that's a lie." And he said, "And you can buy islands for $100,000, your own island." And so I was like so excited, and I spent the whole day checking online, is it really true? And is it like Mexico where the government can take away your property, or do you actually own it? And he said, "Oh no, you own it. It's British common law. It was a British colony." So I got so excited, and my husband came home from work, and I said, "I think I found a place we can move to finally." And it was true. You could find, I mean, 15,000 wasn't very nice, but it was still a piece of property with water. So with all the crisis going on in my family and the stress, my husband and I decided, let's take 10 days and we will go and research it ourselves. So after reading a book by Lance Sluder, who's an expert on Belize, and I have to say, I am so excited he endorsed my book afterwards. There's a little blurb by him. We went to visit 3 different parts of Belize. The north part we thought would be a good place for our family because the schools were supposedly good, and the place is called Corazal. And then, I don't know if you've heard of an island called Ambergris Key. It's a beautiful tourist island, and a lot of Americans, Canadians, and Europeans live there, but it was expensive, and so we decided we wanted to simplify. And then the third place was Placentia in the south, but that has a lot of rain and lots of bugs, much more than the north. So what we did is we had reservations for the first night, and then we rented in a hotel, and then the rest of the time we just said, let's just have adventure. We'll go and check it out. And we didn't have a rental car, and we went to the airport, and the woman at the airport said, "I don't have any cars left." And we were just about to walk out thinking, what are we going to do now? And she said, wait, I have an old car. Are you willing to take it? And I said, of course. That was the excitement. It was a rusty old Suzuki Samurai. I didn't want a fancy car. I wanted to get away from that. So we rented this rusty old car, and I felt like this was the best, adventure in my life. So we decided to go up north and check out the cheap place where the kids could go to school. And we decided on a place called Consejo Shores, which is an expat community. And we found a house to rent in the north. In fact, the realtor said, this house is available and it's furnished. And I said, well, how do we rent it? And he says, well, the liar owns it. I said, the liar? Who's the liar? And he said, like your husband. And I said, oh, you mean lawyer? The lawyer. They called them liars. And I said, hey, I married a liar. So that was kind of funny. But anyway, so my husband Duke moved 3 months before the rest of us. And when he got there, his goal was to work 3 weeks in Belize and 1 week in Orange County until we moved. And, the goal was everything would be over the internet, and he would work from this house. Okay, so I get a phone call from him when he arrives, which I will read to you. He said, "I think we made a mistake," Duke said, calling me after his first night in the hut. The house wasn't available. He ended up having to rent a hut. The liar had changed her mind. I said, "What do you mean?" My heart started racing. "Don't panic." Duke knew me well. "It's just the hut. It's infested with bugs. You should see my legs. I look like I have chicken pox." "Alec's going to freak out," I said. "A scorpion landed on my pillow during the night." "You're kidding, right?" That didn't sound like my husband, the man who took me camping and got upset when I asked him, "So where's the tent?" "Are they dangerous?" I asked, concerned for our kids. "Evelyn says they sting, but they don't kill you." Noticing my lack of response, Duke added, "The good news is mosquitoes only come out after the rain. Normally they stay in the jungle behind our hut." When Duke described our water supply, I thought he was exaggerating. "We only have cold water and it stinks of sulfur from the well. The shower barely trickles, the pressure's too low. I hope I can fix that. Try to find another house that's less primitive." So that was when he was there, and my job was to sell our house, and we had his car and my car and everything we owned. We just decided we're going to do this. So we moved from this 5-bedroom house in California to this hut in one day with 3 kids and a dog. We took our dog with us. And my kids' initial reaction to the hut, because they had never been to Belize, was, "Okay. Mom, I hate this place," Alex said as I walked in the front door. "The water stinks, there are bugs everywhere, and I found peanut husks on my bed." "Yeah, Mom," Josh added. "Dad said a mouse made the mess on our beds. Why did you and Dad bring us here?" Steve remained surprisingly quiet. My difficult son was the one who didn't complain. And I was not at all expecting that. It was just unbelievable. It was almost,
peace of mind.
Yes, it was almost like we had done him a service to take him away from a situation that he wasn't able to cope with. And so he never complained. So the hut had no glass in the windows, and when it rained, it would rain inside, so we had to put all the furniture in the middle of the room because the rain goes in sideways. The roof is made out of palm fronds, so of course all these, and the walls are made out of skinny tree trunks, so the bugs could come in and all this. So this was not what we expected. As I said, the house wasn't available, and the house was just a few in the same neighborhood, but anyway. So my kids refused to get out of the hut. For the first few days, they just stayed inside, and I'm like this mother who's like, "Come on, let's go, get out of the house, do this." And my husband said, "Just leave them alone, they'll come out when they're ready." But no, I had to push them, and so one day they go outside, and my middle son, who is 14, oh, he's 13 actually, he touches a poisonwood tree. And I had never heard of a poisonwood tree. I don't know, have you heard of that? And he was highly allergic to this. So this is a few weeks after, but his entire body got full of blisters. And the way you can tell a poisonwood tree is you get this black oval on your knuckle, and it looks like Sharpie, like ink. And I tried to rub it, and then he would smeared it under his eye, and then his eyes got so swollen, and the entire body, and I was so worried. I thought, what a terrible mother I am to bring my kids to this country. And my husband dropped him off at the hospital and left him because we had one car, and we lived in the hut, and he dropped him off to get treatment and came back to tell me what was going on. So we tried some remedies before we sent him to the hospital, because the realtor who lived near us said there's an antidote to this tree called the gumbo limbo, and what you do is you take the bark and you scrape it, and then you put it on the blisters and it's supposed to disappear. Well, I'm thinking, okay, let's try it. So we try it, and it's like we sprinkle this, and I'm expecting a miracle. Well, nothing happens. And then he says you can boil the leaves and make, I thought you had to drink tea. And he says, no, you boil the leaves, you crush them, and you put them on like spinach on the body. So we tried that, nothing happened. So that's when my husband ended up taking him to the hospital, and they gave him an IV. Well, of course, I thought, how could I have put my son's health at risk by taking him to Belize? What if the doctors weren't qualified? What if the hospitals didn't use sterilized equipment? What about AIDS? That's what my biggest fear was. It took him 5 weeks to heal, and we had no air conditioning, and he was itchy and uncomfortable, and they told us the best way to cure this is to put him in an air-conditioned room. Well, we had no choice. So for his 14th birthday, after he turned 14, we didn't have any presents, of course. That's the reason we left. And we said, how about we go to the Mayan ruins? And of course he wasn't too happy about, this is a teenager, and you tell him, here, this is your birthday gift, we're going to go visit some Mayan ruins. But anyway, today he still talks about that as an experience. See, my husband's on the right, and then this is Alec, the tall one on the right. He has always been a very compliant, good kid who studies hard. So when you have several kids, there's, you notice the differences between them. And he was very nervous about his education, because when he was in school here in 4th grade, he wrote an essay that he never, in 4th grade, so he said, I never want to get below an A. And when I get married, I'm going to have a boy and a girl. I mean, he always had everything planned out. So he wanted to check the schools when we were there, because we were there in the summer. And you can buy the books. And the funny thing is that we had read that the literacy rate in Belize is 97%, and that the schools are good. So we assumed that everything would be fine. So we purchased the book. We went to the local, you have to go to the Ministry of Industry in the town. And there's this lady sitting on a swivel chair, and we say, we'd like to buy the books for 9th grade. And there's only like 3 books on the shelf behind her. And I'm thinking, where are all the books? I mean, is that it? So she turns around and she picks one up, and she says, this is the English book for 9th grade. And we said, what about the other subjects? Oh, don't have them. So we took the 9th grade English book, and we're driving back, and my son, Alec, is looking through it, and all of a sudden he screams, ah! And we said, what's wrong? What's wrong? He said, do you realize what they're teaching us in 9th grade English? How to tell time, and how to put ing at the end of a word. And he's 14, and he's like, what are you going to do about my education? And my husband and I are, oh my gosh, what can we do? We can't move back. We don't have a house. We don't have anything. So we have to quickly think of a plan B. Well, the only plan B we can come up with is to talk to other Americans who are there, but there's no one in our neighborhood because it's a retirement community. So I network, and I'm told that the island, which I mentioned before, the beautiful island where most of the Americans live, has a school. Yes, for vacation. Has a school run by Americans, but it's from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I said, so what happens to the kids that are in high school? And the realtor told me, well, they do internet school through an American program. So thankfully, we decided we could do the internet program for the 2 older boys. And so what happens about a job? Well, when we were living in the hut, the electricity was going back and forth. Some days we had no electricity for 4, 5, 6 hours, and the satellite dish for the computer was working like sporadically. When there's cloud cover, we had no internet, so my husband was not working hard enough for the American company, so he got fired. And so then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now to make a living? So we end up deciding to move to the island of Ambergris Key, because there's more opportunities for jobs, better schools, and my kids weren't very happy in the hut because there was no one there for them to play with, plus the schools weren't good. So what we ended up doing was we ended up buying a house, and there's 4 houses, and we had one of the 4. And the house, the other 3 are all owned by Americans who don't live there. They rent them for tourism. But we're the only family who lives there full time. And one of the beautiful things is, because the others are renting, there's a caretaker, a 21-year-old man named Juan, his wife Teresa, who's 20, and their son, little Juan, who's 4. And that little boy is the best thing that happened to my family. I'll show you. Okay, so this is the view from there. My husband's finally relaxing and getting away from his law firm. This is little Juan, the little boy that brought so much joy to my family. My 3 sons sort of adopted him as their little brother, and he couldn't speak any English. And in 3 days, he's already talking with an American accent to my sons. And there's my youngest, Josh, who's 10, with little Juan, and they're playing together a lot. And so now my kids are getting happier because they've moved away and all this. And one of the things is, everything we did, we had to do by boat, because there was no road. So to get to school, we had to take the kids by boat. And it was just an amazing experience. There were dolphins. We even had to do our shopping by boat, which was a big headache, seriously. But what I wanted to tell you was that it developed a new sense within us that, you know, the shops in the grocery store, one week they have milk, the next week they don't. One week they have eggs, then they don't. So we have our new motto is if they don't have what you want what they have. And my boys learnt to feel grateful for things, like even a glass of fresh milk became a huge deal because we were drinking powdered milk from Mexico. And when the kids, they started doing things together like fishing, and nature was our entertainment because we didn't have television, no cell phones, nothing. So that was wonderful. And then another thing that was amazing is that the caretaker and his wife taught my kids such an important lesson about education, something that I was so grateful that they could never learn here. Juan and Teresa spoke Spanish at home, and yet their English was good. Juan summarized their short life together. He was 21 and Teresa was 20. They married at 17 and 16 in order to have sex. Oh. Teresa said, "Sex isn't allowed unless you are married," she continued, not at all embarrassed in front of my kids. 9 months after our wedding, little Juan arrived, she added. "What about high school?" I asked. "I quit school at 12 to work in the sugarcane fields," Juan said. "I work from 5 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, 7 days a week." My boys turned quiet. I got paid $75, which I gave my dad for food. He paused, took a sip of water, and continued, "I have 11 brothers and sisters. Teresa also quit school at 12 because her parents couldn't afford the books. My boys liked Juan and listened to every word he said. No lecture in the world could have been more effective than Juan's story in teaching my boys gratitude and how privileged they were to get an education. So that was those life learning lessons. Sometimes you have to go away to experience things like this. And because nature was our entertainment, my boys would, just sit there for hours looking at the ocean or on a palm tree. The starfish was right there. We could grab it down in the water. And another thing was we had our dog with us. So this is the kind of entertainment we had. Let's see. It was such a different life. Does anyone know how the oven works? I asked. No, Duke said. I've never used it. Unlike my California oven, this one used gas. So I opened the door to figure out where to stick a match to light it. Just as my eyes reached mid-shelf, a huge rat made direct eye contact with me. I quickly shut the oven door, yelling, "There's a rat in the oven!" The boys immediately thought of Cookie, our suburban rat terrier, and opened the door to see whether she knew what rat terriers had been bred for. All 5 of us stood behind Cookie, waiting for some entertainment. She placed her front paws on the open oven door and wagged her tail. Not quite the reaction we'd expected. She finally attempted to jump inside the oven just as the rat ran into a hole in the wall. I made mashed potatoes instead of baked potatoes for dinner. So, anyway.
So that beautiful Belize we see in the pictures is just the visitors area?
Yes, that's most of the time it's the island that we were living on, the Ambergris Key Island. And I don't know if you've been following the news about, well, I'll talk about it a bit later, but the whole scandal that happened with John McAfee. I don't know if you're the antivirus guy. He was in the news, and they were showing Ambergris Key. Well, he lived 2 or 3 houses away. We didn't know him, but he lived a few houses away from us. But I'll tell you about a business that we started, and what I wanted to show you too is that finally my husband had time to reconnect with his kids, because the lifestyle is so simple. I mean, and we wanted to make a living, so that was a difficult problem. We were living off our savings, and the kids knew that we were trying to start a business, and they were so helpful. They were like joining in. Well, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And one of the ideas was to try a paintball business, which is, of course, for teenagers on the island. So we finally were advised to start property management. And the reason I mention John McAfee is because the man who was murdered was named Greg Fowle. And he was the guy who came to our house and had a beer. And he was such a nice man. And he told us that we should start a property management business. So because we were isolated and we lived 5 miles north of town, there were no property managers at the time. And we thought, oh, what a great idea. Well, my husband, being American, immediately made a website and did things the way you would in the US. He started putting together information for tourists, like where can you buy things that cost less? How much should you pay for the boat ride to town? And the reason he did this is because the tourists who stayed in the other houses would ask us, how much does it cost to take a boat from San Pedro to here? And we would say, oh, probably $15. And they said, well, they charged us $100. So, of course, my husband was telling the truth, and we were telling the truth, and we got in trouble. The locals didn't want people saying things like that. So I think the mistake we made is we rushed into it too quickly, and one day our boat was, we were in the boat and it started sinking. Water was coming in. And my son had an old sailboat and something someone or something had cut the anchors off and it was drifting. So we were thinking, and we got threatening phone calls about our website. So that left a sour feeling about starting a business. And you know, I saw that my boys were hanging out together. That's them. They would sit and talk. And this boat, this is my oldest son, he built it with plywood with his little brother in one day. And you can't see, but little Juan is in the boat too. You can see the little black head, his hair sticking up. So those are the kind of things that the boys were doing. They were reconnecting, not, you know, entertainment like movie theaters and all this, just being a family. And so I felt like we had accomplished our goals. My son was back on track. He was doing really well with the internet school. His grade point average had shot up, and all the problems that we'd had at home, we didn't have those problems. We had different problems, but not those. And so how did we change? Well, as I said, my family grew much closer, and our value system changed. My boys have become extremely frugal. Even to this day, back here in Orange County, they're not the type that go out and need materialistic things or to show off or anything like that. And I also realized how hard people work here in order to buy stuff. And a lot of stuff you don't need, but this is kind of something that we realized. You know, there's so much, people are so much happier in Belize with less. They're smiling more, and so all these things obviously affect you. And I'll never forget when I first came back and I went into the local Ralph's supermarket, and I was standing there and I was looking at the cereal, and I just could not decide. There was too many choices. And the staff member came up and said, "Are you looking for something? Do you need help?" And I said, I wanted to say, "Well, could you help me decide?" Because we had no choices like this. And it was just unbelievable how just even after 6 months you can change. We were far less wasteful with electricity and water. I mean, you wash your hands, you turn the water off, you put the soap on, you turn the water on, because we were relying on rainwater. And for a lot of times there was no rain, and the cistern was almost empty. So my kids could, you know, if they washed, it was with a little sponge. There was, you know, it was completely different. And so when we came back, we realized that beautiful house that we had didn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've downsized. We live in a not as nice neighborhood as we used to, but we don't care because we feel that what's important is the family, and that what we did for our kids, and that we can uproot because we're not attached to things anymore the way we used to be. And other life lessons, I learned that there are always options in life. You know, so many times if you lose a job or if you have problems, you tend to just think, well, we have to stick it out here, but there's always an option. You can move. Even in Belize, a lot of people were living on Social Security because they couldn't afford to live in the US. But lowering their standard of living, eating chicken, rice, and beans like the locals, and having beautiful nature to compensate for stuff. And then they can afford to live there. And healthcare, you know, hospitals, somebody had to have treatment. When my son went to the hospital, it was free. They said, give a donation. So there are so many options that people don't really think about. And another option is house swapping, or renting your house out and doing an exchange, or house sitting in another place where you don't have to pay the rent, but you take care of their house for them if they're moving somewhere else for 6 months out of the year. I know several friends who've done that in Australia. And then what did my kids think of the experience? Well, if I asked them, they'd probably say, they don't say what they really think, but I've heard from friends that they say, oh, it was a great experience. And the son that touched the poison wood had to write college essays, and he wrote about two things. One was he said that, by the way, he's going to become a doctor now. He's going to UCSD. He's just finished Santa Barbara. And he said that he saw two things. His father was so happy in Belize. And he said he realized how important it is to pick a profession that you really want to do in your life, because he knew that his dad was overstressed and didn't like his job. So that was the first thing he wrote in his essay. And the second thing was that when he went to the hospital, he couldn't communicate with the doctors because they spoke a different, Spanish, and he was speaking English. And he said he realized how important it is to really communicate with your patient, to make them feel safe. And that was another reason he's always been interested in biology, that he wanted to become a doctor. So I thought that was really interesting. And my oldest, the one here, who was having problems, went to University of Michigan and graduated with a degree in engineering. So he straightened out. And the youngest, who's now 19, he joined the National Guard. When he came back to Orange County, he said, I don't fit in. I want to go to military school. And so he didn't want to be with the other kids, and he went to New Mexico to military school, and then he wants to join the Army. Not exactly what I had expected, but that's what his choice is, so I have to go along with it. And then, so what about me? What did I learn? Well, I was looking for paradise, because to me, paradise was always a tropical island from the time I was 18 years old. I went to the Bahamas with my parents, and I thought, I have to live on an island. But this is what I learned. All of us, my sons included, have learned to take risks in life, to embrace adventure, and to accept different ways of thinking about life's challenges. And though Belize failed to live up to my cliched vision of paradise, it taught me that paradise is not a place, but a state of being. I discovered my Caribbean paradise within my family, a gift far richer than I could have imagined possible, and for that I shall remain eternally grateful to Belize. So, thank you so much for listening.
Oh, it was wonderful.
I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you very much.